Hello and welcome back to Minutes with Michael, quarantine, emergency, power out, snowstorm edition. I just went to Home Depot to get a couple of extension cords so we can run our generator, and the power was out there, and so they had to walk me through like these dark corridors with the little flashlights. It was pretty cool. Anyways, I just wanted to tackle the Minutes with Michael real quick. We're not going to make up part 3 yet. That required a lot of information. We're talking about like ID 2020 and Bill Gates and Rockefeller and all the conspiracies, and there could be a grain of truth to some of that stuff, so we're going to take a look and how it all ties into the end times. You know, it's pretty exciting. I've written a lot of notes about it, so we'll tackle that later. But today's going to be a little shorter, but I do want to tackle what I think to be the greatest conspiracy theory about all the COVID-19 stuff is what role God has to play with it, right? So even non-Christian theists, which I think is a very rational position. I'm not really sure how the universe just explodes from nothing. You say, well, a quantum field. Well, that's still a thing. It still exists. And the matrix of everything that exists can't come from a matrix of something that doesn't exist because it doesn't exist. Now, that being said, even theists and non-Christians and things like that all, say, okay, well, there's a God. But deism is very tempting right now sometimes for people because you say, well, God spun the world into existence, maybe keeps spinning like a basketball on his finger, but doesn't intervene in humanity. There's some logical issues with that, I think, especially when you look at the person of Christ, which is why I'm a Christian instead of a deist. But the reason I think deism might be tempting is because it's hard to reconcile what role God does have to play with something like coronavirus. You say, I thought God was sovereign. Yes. Well, I thought humans had free will. Yes. You mean God caused Katrina? God caused the tornado that wiped out my house? God caused the cancer in my child? God caused the... You can go to really dark places with the sovereignty of God. And I've heard some pastors, they say, well, God caused the coronavirus to judge America. Maybe. I mean, we don't have the luxury of prophets saying this is going to happen, right? Read in Jeremiah, talks about how Babylon is the hammer or the battle axe, the cudgel of God. God uses Babylon to hurt Israel, but does God cause Babylon to do that? A great example is, the Israelites in the captivity of the Pharaoh in Egypt. Did God cause the Pharaoh to take them captive? No, the Pharaoh rose up who didn't know God, and yet God's a careful planner. And everything that humans did fell into the purvey, the sovereign ordinance of God's planning. So, and someone say, well, God hardened Pharaoh's heart. It's actually a mix. The first few times, Pharaoh hardened his own heart, and then God hardened his heart. And you say, well, how does that work? No one has it figured out. There's a lot of people who pretend. But I think the safest place to stay into this is say, I don't know exactly what it means, but I do know that there is a delicate balance, a firm tension between delicate and firm are opposite, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. A very real tension between God's sovereignty and human free will. Because I have free will, but I also acknowledge that God is king. But let's go back to the Garden of Eden. God told Adam and Eve, I want you to steward this good world. I made a good world, I made good people, and everything is good. Very good, in fact. But it stopped being very good when humans stopped acting very good. And nature itself, it seems to have taken a nosedive as well, as a result of man's lack of stewardship. I don't understand how all that works. I don't know how much of the language is supposed to be literal, figurative. I don't understand, but I do understand that the lesson is that human failure is the cause of a lot, maybe not all, a lot of nature's failures. So does that mean this is all man's fault? I don't know if we can say that. Environmentalists will say that. Global warming, Katrina, coronavirus. I mean, you can look for an article. You'll find conspiracy theories on how humans caused this inadvertently because we, cows pass gas too much. That sort of thing. But I just want to dispel the conspiracy theory on either side. One extreme says humans alone are responsible for this. I don't know how humans can be responsible for something like Katrina. I can see how humans are responsible for 9/11. And if this thing came from a bat, which a person ate, then yeah, technically a human is responsible for coronavirus. It might just be that simple. But at the same time, as Christians, we have to acknowledge the harsh reality that God is choosing not to go and stop it, just like he didn't with any other plague in modern history. Why? God knows. God has his reasons. And it could very well be that more good will ultimately come of this than the evil and the pain that we're experiencing in the midst of it. You say, I don't like that. Well, trees don't like being pruned either. So the conspiracy theory, God sent this to judge us. The solution, we don't know the mind of God. The hidden things belong to him. And we've got to just put ourselves in a place that says, yeah, humans can bear responsibility. At the same time, God can be sovereign. Remember, Joseph said to his brothers, you meant it unto me for evil, but God meant it unto me for good. So the same event can be happening. Completely different motives on either side. And the brothers of Joseph, they were the ones who threw him in the pit. But the God of those brothers, the God of Joseph, was the one who said, I know exactly what's happening. I'm watching. I am waiting. And ultimately, more good is going to... It wasn't fun for Joseph to be in prison. False imprisonment after an accusation. Not to mention being in a house with a woman who's tempting him. That's quite a test for Joseph. You say, well, God doesn't tempt people with evil. No, God doesn't, but people do. And God does sometimes allow us to be in those tests. Not to try to make something better of us, but to see what's already in us. That's what tests are for. So I think that's the answer to the conspiracy theory. Did God send this plague to judge us? Not unless you live in Egypt, around 1450 BC. Well, is it all just a big coincidence? Not unless if you're a deist. There's a tension there. We're supposed to live in it. And if it makes you nervous, welcome to the Bible. It's got a lot of tensions that we're supposed to live in, which is why Calvinists and Arminians can't quite agree, because each one of them has some pretty good talking points. Arminians really lean much more on the side of human will. Calvinists lean much more on the side of God's sovereignty. And the answer is, just like with the coronavirus conspiracy, somewhere in the middle. And everyone's going to find their own place in that middle, but please stay toward the middle. So I will thank God for his provision and protection throughout this coronavirus. I will take my own safety and responsibility into my own hands, while at the same time trusting in an overarching, loving, watching, caring Father who, if the sparrows, oh man, I'll close with that. Did God actively feed the sparrows little bitty thing? No. But in his sovereign providence, they eat. In his sovereign providence, the lilies are clothed. And in his sovereign providence, we can rest. So anyways, COVID conspiracy. That's the end of that 4-parter. We're going to talk about some more fun stuff. I do have a secret plan for Monday that'll hopefully make you laugh just as much as Get Fit with Mike Britt. Just another nonsense video. I think we'll release those on Mondays for April. All right. I love you. Have a wonderful day.